Welcome into the Crypto Bunker podcast. Today we're going to be talking about silver, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and a few other things that we can take a look at. So we're going to do a full overview of everything. First, I just want to touch on silver because we are experiencing a huge rally in silver. As you can see on the chart, it looks very nice. We have broken out of this wedge pattern that we've been in for a pretty long time. And what I think that usually with commodities, and let me also just say, not financial advice, but also, you know, just do your own thing. There's no reason to really be too concerned with any investment or asset in the way that people are these days. People are very enthusiastic and about technology, economics, investing, things like this. But when you give yourself up to those things, you are giving something up, you know, um, in other ways. So just realize, just keep a level head, try to keep your same temperament, when you're trading and when you're um, investing in things, and make sure you're investing for the right reasons in your own way as well. So I would just say that what I want to say is that we're probably in comparison around these levels here, back back when we, in like '09, January, a 10. Um, and, we rallied up and really we're very overextended in silver right now. So if I can zoom up more on this, um, I will just say that, um, I will just say in terms of silver that, we can just look at the weekly moving averages. Okay, you guys know that this is something I've covered many times, and it's really important. So what basically the lesson is that when the moving averages are skinny, like they have been throughout this whole period, this is called accumulation. This is when you want to be buying. Okay, so it's an accumulation range, just like when we were in an accumulation range here, right? So we had our accumulation range here. And in this case, we had a bottoming, which is kind of a capitulationary period. It wasn't the same. It's never the same. Um, I would say that this is very similar to this in the '08 crash here. And so if we look at the pattern of that and compare it to this, we can kind of put that there. Um, and it's not exactly, a fit, but it's, going to be something like this. It's not exact, like I said, but it is similar in some ways. Um, so what I would say is that this is probably something we're going to be looking at, and I'm not saying that necessarily it will happen exactly like this. In fact, I personally think that we are very close to, a chop and then a correction back down to the 25 level, which would test the outside of this range. And knowing silver, it can be very unpredictable. And so silver, and commodities in general, especially commodities, sometimes what you will see is you will see a breakout, okay, of a wedge, and then you will actually get a double bottoming process, and then the rally will come. Okay, so I'm not saying that that will happen. I will give you a comparison um, to check out in terms of um, oil. So if we look at oil, um, we can see that we'd had the same thing, right? So, and I did predict this. I didn't trade it or anything, but I was saying um, that there was a double or a breakout and then a possibility of a double bottoming, and we did do that. We came back down and we bottomed on the 200 week. So we broke out here, and people were calling for $200 oil. We came back down, retested, and honestly, with oil, in terms of this bull market, that we're sort of in with oil, I would just say that this is an accumulation range again. We got overstretched here on the moving averages. We can see they're all in order. They're overstretched. And then we can see here that they are skinny again. And so don't, I wouldn't doubt that we would come in and test these ranges and kind of range here for a little bit. Um, and we may even range there for, maybe 6 to 12 months. And, that's definitely possible. And then we break out um, sometime next year around this time, maybe, um, potentially. I mean, oil is such a political thing that it's hard to really even predict it because it can just be manipulated and stuff like that. So, yeah, if we take a look at gold, I would say with gold, we definitely are overstretched as well. Most people know this at this point. I would say that this is a topping candle as well. So this is like a doji that you would normally see at a top. And then you can see this, how it comes up, but it doesn't come up to that high yet. So I really, I potentially, the fact that we are still in this kind of process of like higher lows, I would like to see, even though we did test the 20 week here, I would like to see a test of the 20 week again. Um, Potentially a sharp one, a sharp test. And that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of seasonality. May, June, July, not the best for gold and silver. Now in 2020, we did have, this rally, but that was because of the stimulus and the fact that we had this big crash and then they printed a bunch of money. Um, and but traditionally, um, seasonality is not great. As you can see here, June, that we topped in April, came back down, bottomed in August. That's definitely something that I could see happening here. Um, you know, Definitely a possibility, that would play out kind of like that, where we would test that outer range like real quick, sometime in August, and then we would rally back up for like, election purposes and kind of the fear that comes with that. We would come back down because, we have more certainty around who is the president, and then maybe, it would just kind of finish out its rally and top in that January 2026 timeframe. Um, that's potentially something we could look at with gold. If we look at, let's see, Ethereum here, um, what we can see is that we have broken through, kind of supports, but we are testing the 20-week SMA. So the 20-week SMA traditionally would be support. And if you look at this on a reverse pattern of like what we just looked at with gold, you can see we have a little bit of a pickup here in a doji, and then now we have a higher low on this weekly. We tested the 20-week SMA. We're still not in order, so it's definitely not, fully good to go. But from what I know and what I look at, I look for a test of the 20-week just like this. And I do see ETH matching up very well with this cycle here. If we look at it, it's the same pattern. Um, and we see the bottoming out, and really what I would say is, and I think I tried to compare this before, but I can do it again. So what we saw really was we saw a big crash and a bottom, big crash, bottom. Then um, we had this rally here, which is here. Then we had this correction, which was this. And so, people get confused because they think, I mean, first of all, when we had this correction here, um, you know, we were below the 150-week SMA. When we look at it now, we're above all the moving averages, okay? Just like here. So, if we look at that, we look at the 20-week being tested here, we look at the fact that it was not in fully in order here, and if there was a 200-week on this thing, it wouldn't probably have been in order at that point either. So, in all reality, the probabilities favor the fact that we are bottoming out here. We also have continued growth in the economy and inflation. So that is a quad two scenario where we usually will see stocks, crypto, and pretty much, a lot of things will do well in quad two. We do have some geopolitical concerns right now, and um, that is fair to point out, and that I think is why gold and silver are rallying so much. But those things can clear up very quickly. They can be forgotten very quickly. Things happen all the time in the Middle East, and I understand that it's a little bit different this time. I'm totally, sympathetic to that. And this is just what I'm seeing. This isn't even my opinion. Like I just happen to be someone who has been given the skills, I guess, to be able to read these charts and sort of just because I've like done the work over the years, I've been able to kind of understand, or just see things. It's more of like a gift. So, I'm not trying to say like any of this egotistically. Okay. So, the markets can go in any direction. I've been wrong many times before. I'm not perfect or anything. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But, what I am seeing is that, we are having this um, potential. So, I mean, that to me looks like the same pattern. We came up, we had this sort of chop, and then we popped, and then we came back and we like shook some people out before we had the real run. So, you know, crazy enough, the ETF for ETH now is priced out. So it's priced completely out. So basically, people think it's going to be denied, and that makes sense. I probably think it will be too. But maybe this chart is telling us that it will be approved. And that it seems crazy that it would go, that we'd be at this part of the cycle, where we would actually go this high. I don't really think that's possible. But at the same time, at this point, have screwed up enough times with Ethereum in terms of buying and selling and holding and buying, that I am just going to buy and hold. There's a lot of good airdrop opportunities. If you haven't checked out Renzo, basically these are restaking opportunities. So, take in mind the risk that comes along with that, but you're earning like all these airdrops everywhere just by holding ETH and staking ETH and doing some things like that. So that's really what I'm focused on right now. Um, we can take a look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's a little different. It's a little bit harder to predict in terms of where we are in the cycle. Benjamin Cowan made a really good video the other day where he makes the argument that we are like in this phase, and that we were actually kind of correct into the summer, um, and not maybe something that would go that deep, but then go up like that. So, um, I could see something like that for sure. And I think it would be healthy, for the market overall to have something like this. It would give us a longer accumulation range. Um, it would just give us a lot of accumulation and fake outs that, you really want the volatility, you want the longer accumulations. Um, and you kind of want to like trick everybody. That's kind of what Bitcoin does. It just tricks people. And I also recognize that we could be doing that right now. So if we look at it on, the 4 hourly or something, it looks bad because we broke through that range that we have been in here, and now we're sort of like retesting that area. Um, if we look at it like this, that's kind of what I'm seeing. It's like a retest and then a dump. But and we also have the moving averages, which are now all in place to be a correction, right? We're retesting the 20, 4 hourly, and then we just continue to retest. And so, not only are we retesting that, but we're retesting the outside of that range. Um, and so usually when you break a range that's this strong, you would then correct the length of the range. And so if we're looking at that, we're looking at like a 55K um, correction, which I think makes sense, as a possibility. We can see that that's the 786 there. We already hit the 618. We touched 59. And so, that's kind of what I'm seeing with Bitcoin. It's a tough thing right now to predict. Um, if we look at it on the weekly, we can see that we're still not in order, but we're very overstretched. And, traditionally, we would come back and we would test this 20-week SMA to confirm the bull market, just like we did here. So that's my expectation for Bitcoin actually right now, is that we would come and test that 55K range, which for ETH would probably mean we'd get a test of the 2150 area. We break through and we kind of test that area right there, which is a really key level. We tested it back here, but we never really tested it. Um, you know, we tested it. We did test it, but it wasn't like a full like correction from a higher um area where we could like really kind of get tested in that area. We also have this coming up, so like, you know, theoretically, Bitcoin halving maybe is coming up. It's in like 2 days. So just keep that in mind. But, with Bitcoin halvings can for sure be sell the news. I mean, I would say like the Bitcoin halving back in these areas here, this is kind of the last Bitcoin halving. So, it was volatile. It didn't really want to break out as much for that. Um, And then, the previous one before that, I think we rallied off of it here. So, just be aware that really anything can happen at this point, but it would be a lot healthier and better for, investors, for Bitcoin maxis, for everybody, if we could just at least come back and test that range. I mean, if you look at it on a broader horizon, it certainly, isn't gonna kill anybody to come and test and start to make those higher lows there. Um, you know, something in those, I would say even if you just draw it from here, where the ETF was, no, that was before the ETF, sorry. But yeah, so we have just higher lows, just bam, bam, and then that would make sense from a charting point of view as well. Um, if we really wanted to, make that a little bit more of an accumulation range. Um, so yeah, just keep that in mind. I also just wanted to cover real quick the 2 year. It's a risky thing to try to call, and I've tried to do it before, but I think that this is somewhat of like a head and shoulders to me. We have an upward facing wedge. Um, you know, it's to me, I mean, we're looking at like, this kind of this flagging, um, that would then, come back down and make a lower low. So that's what I see. But again, and this is the thing too to remember with rates is that, um, well, there's a few things I'll cover with crypto, related to that. So with Bitcoin, the Fed, um, so the Fed was actually doing QT during this period, um, and then QE was here, and a rate cutting cycle was here. So, um, if we can look at that, here, this is kind of what this is what I mean by that. So this is the QE that we experienced with the bull. And it's funny enough, this chart kind of matches ETH Bitcoin. Um, so just keep that in mind that ETH Bitcoin tracks this very well. So this whole thing, if you can kind of picture the ETH Bitcoin chart, it does look like that. This is just QT. So basically, what ETH Bitcoin is potentially trying to sniff out a bottom is that it's a bottoming of QT, which is quantitative tightening. And a rate cutting cycle could mean a correction. It's going to be the opposite of what people think, potentially, with the rate cuts. That's what Benjamin Cowan believes, and he makes a good case for it in his video. So, I would check that out. And we have this trend line that we're starting to run into here, where we're coming into the trend line and we've crossed bearish, like once we, it's kind of like this, right? We run into that trend line, and every time we run into that trend line, we have printed. So, what's the next thing that could happen? We know that this was the money market repo crisis that happened in September of 2019, which then was followed by COVID and more COVID. Um, and now they're trying to make up for that, right? But, something will happen. We don't know what, potentially. And then, we see another QE. That's potentially what we could see. So, um, so yeah, I just wanted to share my thoughts. I'm not going to post many videos on here. I'm not really concerned as much with investing at the moment. So, um, but I just wanted to give my thoughts on a few assets that I know I've been posting about in the past, and that maybe you guys could get some insight into. Like I said, I would recommend checking out that Benjamin Cowan video from a few days ago, which is talking about, I think, the halving or something with the Bitcoin. Like, um, he compares it to when he talked about the Bitcoin 2024 halving in 2020, and so he starts to talk about that, and yeah, it's good. So hopefully you guys have a great day, and I will see you later.